Hello everybody, my name is Zen and welcome to this little micro series that I'm doing about my return to Diablo Immortal. Now, I played this game quite a bit at launch and then absolutely fell off a cliff, just didn't touch it. After I was playing and then just gone, just absolutely gone out of nowhere. And I'll talk about the reasons for that later in this video, but I thought it would be fun to do a micro series on my return to this particular game and basically talk about what has changed as I go through it and discuss my thoughts with the game and how I'm relearning it, because it is like I haven't played in 6 months, so completely relearning the game and just a bunch of other little things that come along with this. Like, has the game improved with all the patches that have come out since launch? What's the community like now? What are people's general thoughts on it? And going through and figuring this out with you guys, the viewers, as we do this. I think that might be fun and interesting. It's not uncommon nowadays, unfortunately, for a game to launch and have a negative reception to it. You know, let's take Cyberpunk 2077 as an example, because it's pretty much the latest example of this, where it launches, has a bad reception, comes out with a few patches, fixes the issues that were with the game initially, and then becomes a success. Now, like I said, Cyberpunk is the latest big example of this, but it's not the only. You know, I think No Man's Sky is definitely on the list of games that sucked at launch and then now are incredible for one reason or another. Is Diablo Immortal like this? I don't know. We're going to find out together in this little micro series. But first, I want to start with discussing why I stopped playing the game to begin with, because I think that it's important to frame my thoughts in this context and understand what I'm saying about the game through this particular lens, and then also taking that same lens and providing feedback to the developers directly with this this mindset. And that means that the game could potentially get better if they take my feedback, and then it also means that we get to experiment with kind of returning to a game that's mid-cycle through one of these like big comeback cycles. And I'm not even going to call it a comeback cycle, because I think that is it's the wrong way to think about this particular game. So again, let's talk about why I left to begin with. First and foremost, back in 2021, I was working in game design and something happened. I've discussed it on the channel in the past, but basically I was retaliated against at my workplace and lost my job. It was terrible. It sucked. And it put a bad taste in my mouth for the games industry, because the games industry is suffering from that kind of issue right now. And again, I'm not going to go into super in-depth detail on that, but the result is I kind of got sick and tired of working for other people after years of essentially doing the grind and trying it. So I decided to start my own business at the beginning of 2022, where I was doing 3D printing of tabletop miniatures and selling them online. And the way that I decided to distinguish that particular business model from other people doing the same thing is I was going to offer custom painted services. So I'm a fairly good miniature painter. I can charge enough to make it worth my while to sit down and paint a miniature for somebody. So basically I 3D print it, then I paint it and sell it as an optional thing. People don't have to buy the painting service. And I highly underestimated how popular that service was going to be right around the time that this game launched. So I started my business in January. Business quickly ramped up over the course of the first couple months of the year, and I was very surprised by that. But by the time launch for Diablo Immortal happened, which is a game that I was super excited for and was ready at launch for this game, the week of, I went absolutely crazy with work. I suddenly was working 14, 15, 16 hours a day, which ramped up to 17, 18 hours a day for a little bit there, and is now back down to about 12 to 15 hours a day just working on my business, because business is good. And you know what? That's a good thing. That's a good problem to have. Although I am quite tired at the moment and working through, you know, time management skills in order to improve my processes and do stuff like that. And I am now running a successful business of my own, and that in itself is a success story. But literally the week that this launched, I just got absolutely slammed with orders, painted orders, no doubt. And I had 15 painted orders having to go out at one point during that week of launch. And I couldn't really find the time to play. My wife hit level 60 before I did, and she was like, when are you going to play with me? I'm like, I'm busy. And we hadn't had that yet. We hadn't had that point in life yet where I was going to be that busy. Little did we know that was going to continue throughout the rest of 2022. But the fact is, I just didn't have the time for the game. And then the sucker punch also happened, because I'm a Diablo partner, and I was planning to do a bunch of content on this game along with running my business. I also upload daily to YouTube, and you know that takes some of that 14 or 15 hours a lot of the time. So I had these grand plans to make a bunch of Diablo Immortal content, and then the game launched, and most people know the story at this point, that it just got absolutely slammed by critical reception of some of the choices for monetization, which are things that we kind of had a hint about before launch, that, you know, this might be an issue, but we were reassured that things were going to be a little different in some ways, not necessarily directly, but we were led to believe that things were going to be slightly different. And then when it launched and people started figuring out how some of that monetization worked, and it got fairly out of hand with people's aggression towards that. I'm not saying whether or not it was right or wrong. It's just was a thing that happened. I'm just presenting the facts here. And for me personally, I was in that really busy place of working, and I just didn't have the time to keep up with all of that news. And I eventually, after a few weeks, looked into it and kind of saw what was going on. It was just like, okay, this is a pretty crappy situation. But at that point, I had already uploaded a bunch of Diablo Immortal videos, and the comments that I started getting, and this is that sucker punch, were so brutal and negative. Every day for about a month, I was having to remove dozens of comments of people being very mean to me for no particular reason. And these videos were made during the closed alpha and betas, where the monetization either didn't exist at all or wasn't fully enabled. And they, you know, just really mean. So between me being really, really busy and just being unable to play, and getting a bad taste in my mouth from the community as a whole being, well, kind of jerks, honestly, it just wasn't, it spoiled the game for me. It literally spoiled my fun, and I was unable to return up until this point. And I just, I kind of, I don't know, I don't blame anybody other than myself, right? Because for me, it was a time issue. So that was the main reason I stepped away from the game. And then the spoiling of the taste in my mouth was from the crappy community reception there. And nobody could have foreseen these two things, this perfect storm of events happening to just absolutely ruin the game for me. And recently, you know, Diablo 4 has had its little thing that it did, its little test that was, it was NDA'd, and yet so many people didn't read the NDA, and unfortunately that was just how it goes sometimes in the games industry. And then there was the press event that happened where people were able to play the first bit of the game. And you know what, as someone who has played Diablo 4, I'm just gonna say that I'm really excited for it. I love the game. I think that it's going to be one of the best Diablo games, if not the best Diablo game, in my opinion. And I think that it shares a lot of design philosophy from Diablo Immortal. Not the monetization. In fact, there is really no aggressive monetization at all. The only thing that you could buy in the game is cosmetic stuff, essentially. Now, the thing with Diablo 4, though, is the way that the world is presented is this open thing that you can explore, and there's other people running around. There's a lot of same design in that as there is with Diablo Immortal. And as someone who is really looking forward to playing Diablo 4, I got the itch to play Diablo Immortal, and that is why I've decided to return and just kind of poke it, just see what's there and see what's changed and be like, is this something that I want to invest time into? So that's the framework for this micro series that I don't know is going to be more than a couple episodes, more than several episodes. I would say it probably is not going to be more than 5. We shall see, of course, but it is going to be a journey that I go on discovering what this game is now as opposed to what it was at launch. So let's talk about some of the returning things that I've done. So I logged into the game and discovered that I was level 52 when I stopped playing. I had played all the way through the point that you're kind of seeing in the background, basically before the game launched, and then when the game launched, it came out with its final zone, and I haven't even touched that. So the very end of this video is where I stopped and was like, okay, I'm going to do the next part, the final part that I haven't ever seen before, for the next video, essentially, and the end game, like level 60 stuff once I hit 60. So the main things that I've noticed coming back to the game is, one, I was initially overwhelmed with the controls, even though I've played a bunch of the game. You know, it's been 6 months, and the game does behave slightly differently than, say, Diablo 3, which I have thousands of hours in. So it's not like, you know, this is the PC beta, is what they call it, where unlike on the phone where you're just touching the screen, or if you've got like a backbone where you've got the controller on the phone, or you just have your Xbox controller tethered to your phone, then unless you've got that set up, you're playing, you know, with the touch screen. But on the PC, you have the controls for the mouse and keyboard, which isn't standard Diablo controls, because you can also move your character with the keyboard, which is a little odd unless you're used to that type of almost like dual axis movement, and then, or dual stick movement. And then I've been using the controller, so I jump in and I was so overwhelmed initially with the controls and just the amount of crap. And this is my biggest thing so far of as a player returning to the game. It was just like, here's all this, like, there's almost everything on my UI was lit up for me to click. It was like, there's new stuff everywhere, right? So I open it up and it's like, here's this new event that's going on right now. And hey, it's got a level boost thing. So every day you can click it, you gain a bunch of experience. So I clicked it and got a level, and it's like, cool, now level 53, I guess. Where did that come from? I just clicked it. I didn't even read it until afterwards. And there was a bunch of other event stuff going on. There was new currency, it looked like, that I was gathering that I had no idea what it was. And it just kind of felt like, you know, when you go back to an MMO that you haven't played in a while, or you go back to like a really complex game that you haven't played in a while and you stopped in the middle of, and you're just like, where the hell was I? What was I doing? Like, you're playing, I don't know, you're playing Mass Effect. You stop halfway through Mass Effect 2, you come back in and you're like, oh goodness, where was I? Oh, there's all these companion missions that I needed to do, the loyalty missions, and which one was I on? Oh, I was doing, I was in the middle of doing Tally's loyalty mission. Wait, what was I doing? Was I playing Renegade or Parrot? And then you're just like, so you have to catch up on a lot of stuff. It's like that times 50 when you're jumping into a game that has a living gameplay style to it, where it's got all of this these updates that have happened that have added to the game, changed the game in some way. And now at this point, I don't know what's good or what I need to be collecting. But the constant in all of this, even though I'm super overwhelmed with the stuff going on, I'm overwhelmed with the amount of UI prompts of like, hey, click on this and get something. And I'm like, I don't even know what this is, but I'm getting it. So maybe it'll be good in an hour when I realize what it is, or when I decide to, you know, purchase this stuff, or like how, you know, how does rank transferring work on stuff anyway? I don't know. So like, I'm trying to figure all this out. The one constant is going back to the gameplay and the controls for moving around and stuff took me approximately 30 seconds to kind of get back into the groove, being like, oh, right, these are the abilities I was using. Right, I have Cyclone Strike, I bring everything in, and then I Exploding Palm them, and then I Seven-Sided Strike and blow it all up, and I've got my dash and my main attack. I'm like, cool. As a monk, this feels right. I love playing a monk in Diablo 3. I loved playing a monk in Immortal, so it kind of just felt right for me, but that's because I play a lot of Diablo. So that part felt right, but it was the combat itself, the tightness of it, the way that the movement was working when I was using my dash, and like the way that some things auto-targeted the way that I needed it to in my head for it to work, and then it just working. Like that stuff felt really tight and made me go, oh yeah, this is it. This is why I liked this game. This is why I wanted to play this game again. And going, you know, this feels different gameplay wise, like combat wise, than Diablo 4 does for sure. But it is just similar enough where I'm like, yeah, no, this is kind of scratching that itch that I want to play Diablo 4, but I can't play Diablo 4 right now. So let's play some Diablo Immortal, and it kind of being like, yeah, this is similar enough that I'm getting that itch scratched. Now the jury is still out on whether or not all the content updates are good, because I haven't done any of that content, and I barely even remember what half of it is. Like I post a lot of the news for it on Diablo Fans, and I do my own reading on it, so I have like a vague idea of some of the content that's in there. But you know what? When you're not playing the game actively, a lot of that information is in one ear, out the other. So it's going to be interesting to hit level 60 and start reaching out and being like, what do we got to do? What is my activities I'm doing in the game now, and how does the general end game loop work? And one thing I'm really looking forward to seeing in probably the next episode, or the one after that, is how does the catch-up mechanic work? Because the game is built with this what's called a world paragon level, where once you hit level 60, you're generating paragon levels, which boost up the character's power and move you further and further into the end game. But there is a cap as to what this number is, essentially a cap, and it goes up every day. It's a very slowly rising cap, which means that players who no-life the game will eventually hit that cap and not progress any further until the following day, where they can get slightly more experience and, you know, so on and so forth. But it means that when that cap is raised, the amount of experience points that the people who are joining in the game, like I am, have to gain seems like a massive amount. You're like, oh my goodness. I don't know what the world paragon is right now, but let's just say it's 500. Let's just say it's 500. I think it's not that high. Then, you know, as a new player, you go, man, I have 500 paragon levels to get. But when you hit level 60, the thing is, you get a bonus to the amount of experience you're gaining to get to that point faster. So you're going to be able to catch up to those people if you put in the time. Me, I know I'm not going to be able to put in the time. I just don't got the time to put in. However, it does help a little bit in the return to the game, knowing that it's at least possible. You know, there's a difference between there's no chance or there is a chance, but I just am not going to be able to do it, even though I know that there's no chance I'm going to catch up to the Paragon World Cap right this moment, or right, you know, within the next couple months, or even the next couple years. Who knows? I know that I just don't have the time right now to put into it to get to that point. But there is still a chance, and that makes all the difference in my weird way of thinking. And I like that, and I'm really curious to see how it ends up functioning. It was one of the features I was excited about pre-launch, and I'm unintentionally getting to be the guinea pig for it post-launch. But that is it for this first installment of this micro series. I want to know if any of you played Diablo Immortal at launch. Are you still playing it? And the most important part of this is, what do you think I should try to poke and break and see what is good and what isn't? Is there any particular part of the monetization, of the end game systems, or of, you know, anything else that has been added to the game that you know of? Or should I try to, you know, figure out is the game even worth it to come as a new player? I think that that's going to be a question that needs to be answered within the next couple episodes. And if I can kind of start getting a feel for that, I really want to know if there is anybody here who would actually go to the game and play. I mean, it is a free game. You can just go download it right now and play it. But I want to know if my thoughts are going to be what help guide that decision, whether or not you should download it or re-download it, or have you absolutely written the game off like 100%? You're just never going to play it. Let me know in the comments. But I'm kind of excited for this weird little journey. It's not something that you get to capture very often, and I think it'll be a kind of a cool digital journal of my adventures returning to a game that I didn't have the time to play and I got so burned on very rapidly right after launch, and it just absolutely spoiled my taste for it. But with all of that being said, thank you very much for watching, and we shall see you all next time.